All right, so it is 2 o'clock. I like to start on time because it is a Friday, and you guys have been amazing people at attending a lot of training this week by host. So we do appreciate you guys joining in and participating. Just for today's session, we're going to be focusing on housing readiness, tenant education, and housing stability. We think that this is a pretty kind of good bookend to the series of training because the most of the training so far has been focusing on how to engage shelter clients throughout our shelter system with this housing first approach. But we also think that there are a lot of best practices and resources out there that we can really provide our clients who are housed after exiting our shelters, right? So we're going to be covering the responsibilities of shelter clients in their new roles as tenants. We're also going to be joined by Ian Cohn and Becca Chanel, who will go over housing stability resources that can help tenants keep their housing longer term. Ian, Becca, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ian Cohn. I am a program officer with HOST. I mostly oversee renter and homeowner stabilization programs. Thanks for having me.
Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. My name is Becca Channel, and I am the program manager for the TRUA program, Temporary Rental and Utility Assistance. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us. Just moving along. I want to say that I want to try something new for my portion of my presentation. I always like to take any opportunity that I can get to learn from our partners from the community. So throughout the training for my portion, you will see a yellow box in the slide that I'm presenting with questions. I would really like for you guys all to just drop in your answers, thoughts, or comments to the chat. We might not necessarily be addressing them out loud, but we can if you like. But that's just a way for me to get feedback from you and see where your thought process is, where your resources that you're working on are. And I think with that, I want to start this training session. So I want to start by posing this question. So why focus on client readiness, tenant education, and housing stability? How does this affect your day-to-day work at a shelter? I know that this is a kind of very simple and very obvious questions to many of you, but just to help us answer that question, I pulled the housing outcomes for our host-funded programs, and for those individuals that were housed for more than 1 year, that's 3,835 households. 76% people remained housed after 1 year. That is a great success, but that means that approximately 920 households return to homelessness in some capacity. So they return to the shelter system at some level. We don't know what that is, but that's something that I think it's very telling because even if a portion of those 920 individuals did not return to the shelter system, that can really reduce the stress that the capacity stresses that our shelter system has, as well as create the foundation for long-term success with the work that you guys do, but focusing more on less individuals, right? So that's something that I kind of just really wanted to highlight of why we're focusing on those topics of client readiness, tenant education, and housing stability resources.
Whenever you
So just moving along, so just looking at the best practices in the field, and from what I've heard from many of our partners, is that the quality of housing readiness and the long-term housing outcome of individuals is influenced by factors that usually fall into three categories. So the first one is whether case management has a strong housing plan. And I know that you guys cover a lot of some of those principles in the previous sessions. So I won't go over those. The other factors are more driven by individual clients. So having a good understanding by a shelter client who is exited to housing, having a good understanding of what their role as a tenant is going to be, which is completely different from a role as a shelter client or a shelter guest. And also and finally, like the third factor are those that strong organizational network that can support shelter clients after housing. So that's what Ian and Becca is gonna focus on. So just under the case management categories, again, some of those principles, some of those best practices include, and I think this is something that is very easy to underplay, is this role between the perception of housing as a choice versus housing as a placement, and what that discussion plays in the housing process that we work on. This means having very meaningful discussions with clients about their preferred taste, values, such as having easy access to transportation, to food, proximity to medical services or family, green space, school choice if they have children, or even exploring options to avoid locations that they might find triggering. And I think this is something that, again, that you guys discussed in the previous session. But I do want to kind of like reemphasize that these discussions are very powerful because both housing is a human right, and in many ways it's aspirational, right? So I think that, sorry. I'm going backwards. Yeah, so I do want to kind of just sorry about that. Just that reemphasize that having those discussions about choice with your clients, it's very important. But also setting up those real expectations that we understand we all work on. So we understand that choice is often determined by the type rental market that we work on, access to vouchers, and the limitation of rental income that your clients often have. But again, framing that discussion between choice and placements that doesn't necessarily mean limiting people's decision making, and that really contributes to the success of a client staying in their housing long term when they perceive this as a stepping stone to something greater, right? So it's one step into something that is more that is a possibility for something more of where they might be at that point after leaving a shelter. And the other kind of best practices and principles that we want to kind of like also focus on is are those tenant skills. And I really want to see if people can drop in those answers to the questions on the chat, because I would like to get those answers from you all, so we can understand where the gaps and where the resources are needed that hosts can bring. Again, some of the essential skills that shelter clients need after leaving the shelter is having a really good understanding of the importance of maintaining unit cleanliness, their interactions with their neighbors and communities, and those positive communication styles with landlords and property managers. And I am very curious about understanding how you guys approach those conversations with your clients, whether the resources that you provide them are educational oriented, whether they are conversational in nature, just one-on-one. I really want to see the level of tenant literacy that shelter clients leave when they exit a shelter. But also, obviously, one of the other core skills that a shelter client needs to leave when they're housed is having a good understanding of their rental lease agreement and responsibilities, and their financial responsibilities there as well. And something that I found really interesting as I was just kind of reading various reports about the importance of financial responsibilities and tenants having that good strong understanding of of their personal budgets, is that creating a personal budget and having a good understanding of their income coming in and out. Something that some of the reports have highlighted is that when people create their personal budgets, they allow an opportunity for clients to see themselves in the future. They really allow an opportunity. It's an activity where they can see themselves in the future, what they're capable of, what their limitations are, but most importantly, where they need outside support. And I think that's really crucial, because if 920 individuals are not being housed or fall into homelessness after receiving housing, there are some lapses, right, in the system that maybe if the client knows how to identify that need, we can come in and help them support them there. And just finally, I want to kind of just like talk very briefly about that organizational support network that is very important after people are housed, living our shelters, which is tenant education before housing and during tenancy. And again, something that I'm really interested in learning are what are the operations, the protocols, the policies and procedures from your organization, detailing how a client, once they're housed, will deal with eviction, damages, inspections, and complaints on their own, right? Or whether they have a good understanding of who to approach, who to reach out to if something comes along that might become too overwhelming or paralyzing to handle on their own. I'm really interested in learning from you all. What are the warning systems that you guys have established once a client leaving shelter may have to know when they are becoming unstable in many ways, right? In terms of needing resources, needing support. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Ian and Becca to talk more in greater detail about the housing stability programs that are available out there. And I don't know if you want me to navigate the presentation, Ian and Becca, but you can take over if you like.
Thanks, Israel. I think Becca might be up first, actually.
I am. Okay. Let me pull up. Can you navigate, Israel?
Yeah, I can.
I didn't pull up the presentation. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
All right. Well, hello everyone again. My name is Becca Channel and I manage the temporary rental and utility assistance program with Host. So definitely want to share with you about that program and how it might be able to serve some of the clients that you're working with. You can go ahead. Yeah. So at Host, we do have a free eviction legal services program. So we work with about 4 legal service providers that can assist a tenant if they receive a demand notice or there's an eviction filing filed by the landlord, or all the way up until the most urgent part of the process where maybe they are getting a notice from the sheriff's department that they're going to be locked out of their apartment. And so these eviction legal services can assist them through that process and maybe help communication between them and the landlord to see if there's any sort of agreement that can be worked out to assist in preventing that eviction. They can also advise on tenant rights and determine whether or not there has been a violation and assist with those issues as well. There's also a free eviction. Oh, here we go. There's also a free eviction legal clinic where folks can go in directly to the Denver County Courthouse and receive eviction legal services, as well as information and assistance with applying for rent and utility assistance. There is one of our legal service providers specializes in evictions for those who are living in a subsidized housing unit. And so they can really assist with some of the more specific issues that those tenants might be facing. And so it's in room 163 of the Denver County Courthouse. It's on Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. And on Wednesdays and Fridays, we get a really high volume, and we do see sometimes people having to wait for quite a long time to speak with somebody. So as much as possible, we recommend people coming in on other days besides Wednesdays and Fridays so they can really be served as quickly as possible. It's growing quite a lot, and we're seeing increasing volume month over month. So it's a great resource for people and really to get that in-person assistance. Go ahead. So that brings us to the temporary rental and utility assistance program. We just launched a new online application portal. We're really excited about it. It makes it a little easier for tenants to access and apply for the assistance, as well as makes it a little faster for us to be able to process and get those tenants served. So there is the website at the bottom of this slide, denvergov.org/rent help. And households can go there to apply. So there will be a button on that website that says apply for TRUA, and it will take them to that online application to complete. So they do need a email to sign up. So if they don't have an email, they can reach out for assistance with that to our customer service line, which I can actually put that information in the chat. It's also found on that webpage, the denvergov.org, but just so you have it available now to, record or copy paste, whatever, I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. There we go. Oh, sorry. Go back one more. Thanks. So yeah, so if there's technology barriers, they don't have an email, something like that, go ahead and have them. They can call the care center for assistance with completing their application. Wanted to share about the types of assistance. The rental assistance is for obviously renters only, and we can provide up to 6 months of assistance. That could be arrears, it could be current rent, and we allow up to 1 month of future rent as well. So if folks, maybe are housed and they maybe I saw somebody mentioned that a barrier is unstable employment. So maybe they're housed and they're successful for they have that employment for a couple months and then get behind on rent because it may be they're experiencing that economic hardship. They can get payment for that arrears rent that was difficult for them to cover, in addition to helping them a little bit in the future to catch up as well. Utility assistance is offered to both renters and homeowners. So whether their utilities are paid with their rent or if they pay them to Denver Water or Excel, we can cover those utilities. If their utilities are being
these 4 right here, not buckets.
Oh,
came today.
I think we have somebody off mute. I can't see who it is. Okay. So if their utilities are being paid to Denver Water or Excel Energy, we only allow a one-time per 12-month period assistance, and that's per utility. So they could get one-time assistance from Denver Water and one-time assistance from Excel. Another thing we offer is relocation assistance, which includes deposit, first month's rent, application fees, other move-in fees as needed. And so because our program really is designed to help prevent evictions and serve folks who are housed to keep them housed, we recognize that sometimes an eviction may not be preventable. Or they may not know that these services are available at the time that they are evicted from their home. So we want to offer those people an opportunity to get stable again into housing and offer that relocation assistance. And so there is a limit to displacement. So they have to have been displaced for less than 90 days in order to be able to receive the relocation assistance. Eligibility requirements are also here on this slide. Fairly standard. The housing income must be less than 80% AMI. They have to be experiencing a financial or housing crisis, and they do need to be their residence in which they're receiving assistance does need to be in the city and county of Denver. That's it for me. I'll hand it back over to Ian.
Great. Thanks, Becca. I put this in the chat, but I did want to mention that we'll be following up with sort of a guide of all of our host-funded renter and homeowner programs, including TRUA, including our eviction legal defense programs. And that guide has information on available services, eligibility, and how to make referrals to this program. So we'll make sure that you get a copy of that. And we're also going to be sending out a tenant rights and resources document that actually legally landlords are required to provide to tenants when they sign the lease and or when they file an eviction in county court. How well that's enforced across the community sort of remains to be seen, but wanted to equip you all as providers with that document. Feel free to provide that to your participants as they enter housing as well. It has tons of great resources, a lot of information about what their rights are as a tenant, especially as it pertains to the eviction process, and sort of defines key terms in the eviction process that can kind of be confusing if you haven't had to participate in that before. So we'll make sure that that gets shared with you all and is available in Spanish as well. Okay, we'll go to the next slide, Israel. So I'm just going to cover a handful of programs for renters that host funds. The first is our tenant landlord counseling program. We actually have two providers for this program, one being Brothers Redevelopment, which manifests itself as the Colorado Housing Connects hotline, which maybe some of you are familiar with. And then one of our eviction legal defense providers, Colorado Affordable Legal Services, they also run a telephone hotline that, sorry, I have a pet trying to get on the desk. They also run a hotline that helps answer questions from tenants and landlords pertaining to their housing placement. They can serve any resident of the city and county of Denver whose income is at or below 80% AMI for their household size. They can do things like referrals to emergency housing resources like rent assistance, or referrals to an attorney if they are being evicted. They can provide some information on fair housing laws and tenant rights and resources. My recommendation would be, if you are working with a tenant, or a tenant contacts you with sort of a legal related question as it pertains to their housing, I would actually recommend directing them to the Colorado Affordable Legal Service hotline, because those are attorneys answering those calls directly, and they're likely to get a more direct answer versus calling Brothers Redevelopment, Colorado Housing Connects. That's sort of a catch-all for all housing resources, but if it's a specific legal question, I would recommend just contacting an attorney, because that's where they're going to be redirected anyway. Okay, we'll go to the next slide, Israel. So another program we have is through the Denver Metro Fair Housing Center. It's a fair housing advocacy, education, outreach, and enforcement program. This is a great resource if you have any tenants who have any fair housing discrimination concerns, whether that be from another neighbor or from their landlord, perhaps in the way that they're being charged certain fees. This program is sort of has two components. One is an education and outreach component. So they provide trainings to tenant groups, to tenant union organizations, to service providers across the Denver metro area on fair housing discrimination, what to do if you think you are experiencing housing discrimination, and what your rights are as a tenant in Colorado and in the city and county of Denver. And then they also conduct intakes and interviews and investigations of people who claim that they have experienced housing discrimination. They will sort of hear that claim and investigate any claims that they deem to have merit, and even sort of escalate more serious claims to larger enforcement agencies. For example, the state of Colorado Civil Rights Division will also, often get involved if there are really egregious fair housing discrimination claims, especially when those claims impact more than one tenant at the same property. And so they can also do some mediation with the landlord, some conciliation, and just kind of generally assist with enforcement of any fair housing discrimination concerns. Again, that's only for residents within the city and county of Denver, and also households who are at or below 80% of the area median income for their household size. And again, there's some referral information there at the bottom, and that information is also included in the resource guide that we'll send out to you all. Okay, and then a housing navigation program. This program is more specific to the East Colfax neighborhoods. This is a program that is staffed by the East Colfax Community Coalition. They are specifically serving zip codes 80220 and 80010. Their work in sort of the East Colfax corridor really focuses on connecting households at risk of displacement with emergency housing resources, including free eviction legal defense services, as well as TRUA, the Temporary Rental and Utility Assistance Program that Becca manages. Another component of that program is that because there are a majority of households in those neighborhoods with limited English proficiency, they really focus on language interpretation and translation services, and do a lot of housing navigation to assist households in applying for these resources directly. So if you have someone living in those neighborhoods or those zip codes, and they need help literally filling out their application or meeting with an attorney, whether it be due to technology literacy barriers or language access needs. East Colfax Community Coalition is a great resource for them. And again, it's also serving households at or below 80% AMI. I think for the majority of our programs, that tends to be the income threshold for eligibility, apart for maybe one or two that are actually specific to homeowners. So as we go through these programs, for the renter-specific programs, you can assume 80% AMI is usually the income threshold cutoff. Cool. We'll go one more. So Sunshine Home Share, this is actually not a program that the city of Denver funds any longer, but I did want to mention it to this group because I think it's a really valuable resource for renters, and maybe one you all are already familiar with. This organization matches renters with low-income senior adult homeowners who are interested, perhaps they have an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, or spare rooms within their house that they own and are willing to sort of rent that room out to a home seeker. Typically someone who does have some type of monthly income because they do charge monthly rent. The rent is typically reduced in exchange for some type of service exchange. So in a lot of cases, a home seeker placed in a home provider's home will do things like driving them to doctor's appointments, doing some yard work, helping prepare meals in exchange for reduced rent. So you can see on this slide that the past 2 years, the average monthly rent for this program was still $650. So still somewhat expensive, even at a reduced rate. And so I would just keep that in mind when making referrals to this program, that if you're working with someone who, as a renter, is interested in this program, having some monthly income is going to be a requirement because they will be still required to pay some rent. And again, they have to be willing to be placed within a home within the city and county of Denver. And that program does offer some case management and financial wellness case management as well for the home provider and the home seeker. So not really a program that the city of Denver funds any longer, but still a really valuable resource for renters who maybe are looking for a reduced rate in a market that's very expensive. Great. I think that's the end of my slides. I'm happy to take any questions anyone has.
Thanks, Ian and Becca. It does look like we had some questions about your programs on the chat, but they might have already been answered. But if anybody wants to just talk through those, I think this is a great opportunity for you guys to hear directly from Becca and Ian. Or if there's anything else that we can talk through for this last session. No.
Oh, Israel, I just wanted to mention one of the questions. They asked which of these services can be provided for those who live outside of Denver. And Ian, I just kind of wanted to check in with you. TRUA cannot serve those outside of the city and county of Denver, but I know legal service providers likely are through other programs that they have. And so wanted to know, Ian, if there's other programs that you oversee that might be accessed by people outside of Denver.
It's a great question. I think for the most part, all the resources I reviewed today will only serve people living in the city and county of Denver or who are perhaps relocating to the city and county of Denver. I know that the tenant landlord counseling program through Brothers Redevelopment, aka the Colorado Housing Connect hotline, is a statewide hotline. And so while the funds we provide to that program will only be used for city and county of Denver residents, they have other funding sources to support that hotline that serves residents across the state of Colorado. And so I think that's a really great resource if you are working with someone who was experiencing homelessness in Denver, but since decided to relocate to housing within the Denver metro region, or even outside the Denver metro that you know of, they can help connect that household to any housing resources available in their area. Otherwise, yeah, everything I went over today is very focused on residents in the city and county of Denver. I know, Beck, I don't know if you mentioned this, but the state of Colorado will also, I think, soon be releasing more funds for rental assistance for residents across the state as well. And so I think that's just something to look out for. I'm not sure that those are available quite yet, but it is coming as we know it.
Thank you, Ian. Becca, we do have another question, I think, for you. Can you use TRUA if you're undocumented?
Yes, definitely. Our program doesn't ask any questions or require any documentation around citizenship status. So definitely encourage them to apply. We also don't require landlord participation. We do make every effort to get the landlord to participate, but if they're unwilling or unresponsive, we can make direct to tenant payments. So those are some situations we commonly see.